Hello, everyone, and welcome to CSP's Vital Talks special panel event. We're excited to have you join us today for Women in Staffing Leading from the Trenches. And we have amazing panelists today, and we're ready to get started. But before we do that, a little bit of housekeeping. The event is live, and that means everything's happening as it happens. And if you have questions, you can put them in the chat box, and we will try and roll them into our discussions as quickly as we can. And we appreciate you coming and bringing your questions. So feel welcome to do so. Before we also begin, I want to say a big thank you to Sylvia, our membership chair, and Keith, our educational chair, and Liliana, one of our panelists who also put together this panel, and our great support team. Lori Oates and Erica Gomez, who's behind the scenes running this event seamlessly. So we're ready to just introduce you to our panel. But if you're not familiar with CSP, we are a membership. We're a nonprofit. We're an amazing group of people that keep our membership ahead of the curve. Our acronym, VITAL, stands for V for Visionary Thinkers, I for Integrity, T for Training, A for Advocacy, and L for Leadership. And today's panel is all about visionaries and leadership coming together. And this is what you get, is you get this kind of success. And they've had challenges, and each one of these amazing women have done an incredible thing by starting in this industry and building a successful businesses, which is why we invited them. So we'll start first with just a quick intro to Liliana. Liliana is a staffing professional with over 25 years of experience, and she joined Balance Staffing to lead the company's diversity and franchise expansion. I can't say that. And she became the first diversity-owned location, and she's got an amazing story. And then we have Yasmin Kleiman, who is the CEO of NSearch, and she's the nation's only recruiting firm that's exclusive in the neonatal nurse practitioners and placement. And this is a business that she recently acquired in 2021. She's got an amazing story because she didn't start off in staffing. So can't wait to hear that. And then Evelyn Milani, president of Avanti Recruitment Solutions. She is amazing. She has built a reputation for her special way of doing behavioral interviews. And she's got a very trusted group of fans. She just came to us, and we're so grateful to have you, Evelyn, and Ashley Anderson. She's the Senior Vice President of Clear Edge Rising, and they are a leadership and development company. I'll let her tell you a little bit more about that and what brought her into the staffing industry as well, and all the things that she's seen and done as a woman in the trench in staffing. So as far as some of the kickoff questions that really seem appropriate to ask are, ladies, you can kind of talk of which one of you would like to address this first. How do you envision the future of staffing and recruiting evolving to support women better with empowerment? What role do you believe that women leaders specifically play in driving this positive change? I mean, it hasn't been easy being a woman in this industry. It previously was more of a male-dominated industry, which, by the way, we love men. They're great. And we're glad to see some in our event as well. Welcome. But we're talking about the special things that you all had to do. Who would like to go first, or do you want me to call on you?
I can go first, Michelle, and thank everyone. I finally got, my computer might let me down, but my iPhone never lets me down. So I'm on video on my phone while I'm on my computer. Technology, we gotta love it. First of all, so glad to be here. Thank you, all of you, for joining us. So I can speak as a veteran, and I can't believe sometimes that I've been in this industry for over 30 years. I don't know where time really has gone because it's been so much fun. But just in watching the evolution from then to where we are now, and really what I am the happiest and kind of most grateful for is seeing how many women leaders there have just in the past 10 years. And I started my business 4 years ago, and I joined CSP probably about 20 years ago. And honestly, when I was a part of CSP, I could count on less than one hand how many women owners were then a part of CSP. And now when I go to CSP events and I see so many more women leaders and women owners, that's when I realize, okay, this industry truly now is catching up with women in leadership in the industry. And it's about time.
Yeah. I can add to what Liliana said, and I also echo just a massive appreciation for being here. And whether you're joining live or you're listening to the recording, I know time is precious, so thank you everybody for your time. And I think that when I think about what is involved in helping to we use the term from Claire Edge Rising of rising up more women. Two things come to mind, and it's opportunities like this that really hit the mark on those two things. And one of them is understanding, and the other is action. And it's forums like these that create a chance for the voices and experiences and opinions and truths of women to be heard and to be understood. And so, when you talk, Michelle, about like an evolution, I think that it's really important that we continue to create these opportunities, continue to foster these spaces and these conversations where the experiences of women can really be heard and be understood, and then that action can be taken based on those experiences. But I do think that we need to be expanding beyond just these types of forums. So not just the conference, not just the panel. Those things are fantastic, but we also need to be looking at all of the meetings that we're holding and the conversations that we're having, and how are we including women's voices and diverse women's voices, and making sure that they're not just heard, but that their experiences and our experiences are honored, which doesn't mean that we have to get our way all the time, but that our experiences are respected, that our opinions are respected. And so I see there being so many more of these conversations happening, which is really fantastic, and it's really uplifting to be able to be a part of them and to be invited into them. And so my hope is that we continue to make these opportunities available, and that we have organic kind of opportunities that are taking place within our company walls. We're a virtual only company, so no walls, but if you know what I mean.
Now, in all these challenges and this, and that they're looking for, and the evolving industry, I hate to say it, the pandemic, right? It changed a few things. Has that added to some of your challenges, or did you find that actually it caused you to pivot in a way where the changes you've had to make, the choices you've had to make, have worked out better for you than you would have imagined if you hadn't had this adversity from what occurred in the pandemic? And of course, the pandemic occurred to everybody, but especially you're all business leaders. You're all, how has that affected you in a good way, where you took that yuck and made it work for you?
I can speak to that from Avanti's standpoint. And first and foremost, thank you so much for having me participate in this great webinar. Our company grew through the pandemic by virtue of many of our clients allowing us to recruit outside of the region that we had been recruiting for. And by virtue of that, we expanded to have kind of nationwide capabilities. And that was great. And I think it speaks to an important characteristic that a company and the leadership team and the entire team needs to bring to the table, especially as things change so quickly. It seems like they change more quickly than they did years and years ago, but it's being nimble and flexible and adaptable. So we were able to do that. And as a result, we had our best years during the pandemic. And if I can, I wanted to comment a little bit on the first question in terms of the industry and supporting women to grow into possible business ownership. When I started, it was everybody I worked with when I started in the industry, we were all, it was a woman dominated region that I worked in. And the difference between the vice president and other competitors I started with Remedy in 1989, great company. So glad that I started with them. But there were women leaders and vice presidents and senior vice presidents, but you didn't see women owners. And I think that what I really was able to take away from both Remedy and Olston was my leaders, who were women, allowed me to run the branches and the regions like it was my own business. And I learned budget and I learned everything that you needed to do. And they also allowed me to fail. And with that, I was inspired when my mother suggested that I just start my own company. And I had always been allowed to run the branches like they were my own business. So I think that's how women today can inspire others to be owners if that's where they want to go. And that is just giving them the platform and a safe space to take on more and more responsibility, and as if they were owning the business. So
that's a brilliant point. And Yasmin, I was just going to reach out to you and just say,
Yeah.
you know, what your background, and of course, you didn't come from the staffing industry, and you joined the industry in 2021, right?
Correct.
And you had a spark that said, "I'm going to get into the staffing industry." What caused that? I mean, maybe give us a little bit of a, that spark that brought you into that. Evelyn just shared how she got inspired by a family member, by her mother, saying, "Hey, you can do this." What did that to you? I mean,
actually, my story will be very relevant to both of the questions you just asked. So I think it hopefully won't be boring to people because of that. So what brought me here is actually quite a journey. I started on high tech. My background's in engineering. But I was an engineer for a while. I went to business school, then I worked in high tech in the business, did various roles for many, many years in Silicon Valley. And then I took a break for family reasons. And when it was time for me to go back to the professional world, I decided that I wanted to be my own boss, basically, because I just felt ready. I had enough experience in the business world, and I felt like I wanted to put my stamp on a business at this point in my career. So I actually went through a journey of looking at a lot of different companies. So staffing wasn't necessarily something that I one day woke up and said I should by a staffing company. I looked at, I looked at basically skincare manufacturers. I looked at lots of even franchises. I looked at Massage Envy. I looked at so many things. I looked at a variety of businesses along the way. I looked at a tutoring franchise. I forget now. I looked at so many different businesses over a span of about 2 years. And what ultimately got me into staffing and led me to acquire the company that I own now is because of the couple things that you just asked about. Number one, because of COVID, our company went virtual in the 2020-21 timeframe, and that really, even though I wasn't necessarily looking for a virtual company when I started my journey, when I saw a virtual company, I immediately realized the benefit of it. It's that you could have a workforce spread across the country, and we are a national firm, so that really meant a lot more of leverage for us to cover our clients and our candidates, more importantly. So I saw a lot of benefit and in having a virtual company. And of course, as a woman, a lot of women can relate to. I think it's also true for men. Going through the pandemic, having the flexibility was very important, and having, not only from a personal perspective, but from a business perspective, my husband didn't have a virtual office. I mean, went virtual, but they were trying to go back into the office. And there was so many complications around going back to the office with all the regulations, especially in California, right? How many people can you bring in at a time? Are you, what are the legal issues around, liability of having people catch COVID at work? So I'm sure some of you went through that, and I have a lot of respect for you for, having to struggle with that. I had none of that, and I knew I was never going to have that. So that was very important for me to add to the value proposition of this business. So I think that, to answer to one of the questions you asked is, I think COVID, during COVID, I understand a lot of the staffing companies went virtual, and as Evelyn suggested, it opened up a lot of opportunities on the business side. But I really feel like on actually building our companies as a national organization and having the flexibility of working from anywhere, I think that makes it easier for women leaders to come into this space and take leadership positions, because whether you like it or not, I think it's true. I can speak for myself. Even though both my husband and I work, we have different duties when it comes to household chores, but I still have a lot. So, we both have to do our share, and, it's just much easier when you have a virtual company. So that, I think, hopefully kind of addresses them one question. And I'll just add one more point as an outsider coming into this industry, which by the way, I think it's a great industry. I think what I found, and I'm in healthcare, so exclusively, as Michelle said, so, the experience of folks or women leaders maybe dealing in light industrial or some other type of staffing might be different. But what I'm finding in healthcare is actually women leadership is very common. And a lot of my client contacts are all very high-powered women. So it's really been very refreshing for me coming from high tech, where, male domination is still, the norm. I mean, you have a lot of women leaders, but it's still, when you look at the C-suites or, the real decision makers, there are a lot of still mostly men. I hate to say it, at least when I left it. And now I see, when I deal with my clients, there's so many women who have positions of power in the healthcare system, in hospitals particularly. They run a lot of big departments. So it's very interesting, and I enjoy that element of it.
And Liliana, I definitely wanted to hear from you as far as, how these challenges affected you, good and motivated you and sparked you with your background, getting your company off the ground. I mean, you had enjoyed a previous career of building another company. Now this is you. This is yours. You're what can you add to helping show women how you evolved, and what sparked you, and how did you take this lemon of the pandemic and make it work for you? Because you place a diverse group of people in your firm as well, and not everything, I don't think, now correct me, are you placing on-site and virtual?
A little bit of both, and kind of similar to Evelyn's story. So, I mean, we opened up for business a month before the pandemic started. Just who would have known, right? But who would have known about so many things that happened? But COVID was very good for a lot of us in staffing, because especially those of us, I run mainly a commercial business. So for those of us that place individuals in what was considered then, what do they call it? Necessary work or essential workers, right? But I guess the biggest lesson learned from me was I spent 19 years before I started the company at a large national staffing company, and ran the West Coast. So I considered myself a very smart business person, right? And similar to Evelyn, actually, Evelyn and I started my career at Olston. We both worked at the same company. That's how we know each other from way, way back. Olston was an amazing company. We feel like we're running our own businesses, and we really were, right? Those of us out in the field, those of us that run a region, we manage our own P&Ls, we manage our offices. We are smart business people. But here's the biggest difference going from corporate America to running your own business. I could tell you, and I could read a P&L inside and out, right? But I never saw a balance sheet. I worked for a publicly held company. So I never saw a balance sheet. I never saw a cash flow statement. I spent money not worrying about where the money was coming in, because I knew the money was coming in. So really, I grew very quickly because I know staffing. I know the business. I hired an experienced team, folks that actually had worked for me in the past. And it was, a year and a half in, we exploded so quickly. Then you really get into the details of running the business. And those are all those core competencies. And, I guess my advice for anyone, and I'm the first one to say, if anyone has the opportunity to start their own business, it's not for everyone, but if you're interested, it's not as scary as it seems. I was lucky, right? I never would have left my company if they hadn't have done me the favor. They eliminated my role, so I didn't have any other choice. But sometimes we find ourselves very comfortable. We're very comfortable. We're very successful. We kind of are just doing it the same. But here's what COVID did to all of us. COVID really kind of made us think outside the box, right? And now what we're experiencing a couple of years later is I'm having a hard time forecasting right now, because our business cycles have been so different over the past couple of years than what we have known for a long time. So I think those are the lessons learned. It's more of understand a little bit more about the core functions, especially on the financial side of what it takes to run a business. And then second, really, really taking time to forecast and take a look at your business model and your business mix, because we can't assume that business now is the same that it always has been. That's what makes our business fun, right? And that's why we're all still doing it. We've all still been doing it for so long, because literally no day is the same. And I can't tell you the last time that I told anyone that I was bored in my job.
Beautiful, beautiful. Any of you other ladies want to add any more to that before we move on to the next topic?
Something that Liliana brought up reminds me of, so as part of our program, we run cohorts, and we have different levels of leaders in different cohorts, all women, all from within the staffing and recruiting industry. And I think it was probably October or November. And we're generally, it's not a round table, so we're not talking about numbers and metrics and putting our books on the table or anything, but it's more general leadership topics and support of one another. And somebody said, how are you all forecasting in our exec group for 2024? And everybody was like, to the best of our ability, like really, and chimed in with a lot of support and a lot of humanity. And I just appreciate those conversations. And Liliana even just saying it here, like, it's difficult. Like, I'm having a tough time as a business owner, and that reality is true. And the more that we can create spaces and places where particularly for women leaders to come together and have those honest conversations and hear that we aren't alone in our doubts, in our fears, in our worries, in our challenges, the less those doubts and fears and worries and challenges have power over us, and the less we can, the more we can separate from them. And so I appreciate, Liliana, your transparency and your honesty on this call, in service of all of us, so that we can all go, it's not just me. I think that when we talk about what's going to help support women as leaders and women as business owners, those conversations being more real, not coming to the table with this air of perfectionism and I have everything figured out and everything's going great for me, because that just breeds more and more of that like closed offness. And what we need more is that openness, that honesty, that transparency, so that we're not stifled by our doubts, so that we recognize and realize that feelings of doubt and worry and uncertainty are all part of the leadership process, right? Like, welcome to being a leader. That doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. So I thank you, Liliana, for that.
I was going to add as well, in terms of someone who is in a leadership role working for in the corporate world, a staffing agency, recruitment firm. I think that when you make the decision to start your own business, the why of that is super important to understand, because your value proposition and what you're going to bring to the industry and why your customers would want to pay you to do what, to recruit or to staff positions for them needs to be really crystal clear. And that speaks to the planning part of it and the forecasting part of it. But by the same token, when I started my company 26 years ago, I had all kinds of and again, that word nimble and flexible and adaptable, I think if you can be that and hire people that are also have those same attributes, you will be more capable to weather the storms. And the industry, when I worked in the staffing industry, before I opened my company, there were so many things that we did so well, and great clients, great candidates. When I envisioned my company, I wanted it to be better, faster, higher customer service, and a better fit between the client and the candidate. So that was really the value proposition that drove me to starting my company. I just had a passion for that, and then just taking everything I'd learned and then implementing that. So you have to understand what you want to bring to the equation that would make companies want to pay you for your services. So.
And along these lines, in this discussion about, evolving, being real, about, where we are and helping each other, is the topic of mentorship. This is an area where historically, you may have all had great mentors. Were they men? Were they women? Was it a mix? Did you have a mentor? Were you your own mentor? That's what we would like to know. Like, what did you have someone pushing you along, or that said, hey, or was that pretty much self-driven? Do any of you care to rawly and really share that information with everyone? Who wants to start? Would Liliana want to start, or Evelyn?
I'll go ahead and start. I'm never shy. So many people have asked me that question about mentorship, and I just think it's, those of us that have been in the industry for a little bit longer, I don't think mentorship was such a talked about subject, or was that formal, right? So if I look back, I have, of course, have had mentorship, but it was never like a formal, like I asked someone, will you be my mentor? Or someone said, I want to mentor you. I have also been so lucky to have amazing leaders, women leaders in the industry that kind of did say, I think they kind of gave me enough rope, right? Where they're like, okay, go and try and figure some of it yourself. But then, of course, they never let me get too far, or never let me get into too much trouble before they reeled me in a little bit. And we're like, oh, kind of watch this. But I think mentorship now is so important. And a lot of it is just because we have different generations in the workforce. My generation, right? we're kind of those ones, latchkey kid, right? I got to figure things out myself. And those of us that grew up in my generation, that's the way we grew up. But the younger generation now entering the staffing industry, they didn't grow up that way. So we have to become better mentors to mentor this up and coming new generation, because we can't assume that they're going to learn the same way that we did. And I learned and I grew from mentorship on watching people do things that I didn't want to do and watching people that did things the way that I wanted to. So it is kind of, but I guess the difference is we all have to watch out for other people, because it's much tougher. It's much tougher these days than it was when I entered the industry.
I
I
can
would say
chime in
that-
a little bit. Sorry, Evelyn, were you gonna? Go
That's
ahead.
fine. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thanks. So I was going to chime in. My experience with mentorship has been very different, obviously, because I haven't had the privilege of growing up in this industry. But I think finding mentors for women is tough in general, in my opinion. Wherever I talk to people from a lot of different industries, it's almost. But I've been lucky that I had some friends who became mentors. So I found that you have to have sort of a trusted relationship in addition to a professional relationship with someone. That's been easier. So going forward, when I try to mentor people, and I've mentored some women in the past, and I found that that was sort of the the thing that always, like, I had some women that worked for me in high tech, and not only was I their boss, but we became became more friendly, we became more trusted colleagues, and who would chit chat about things outside of work, and just had that more of a collegial relationship. So that enabled me to give them more candid feedback and correct them more gently if there was something happening that would be detrimental to their career. And the same way, I found that when I needed mentorship, I turned to more people who are knowledgeable in a topic. And that's why it's been great to come in this community. I found the staffing industry to be very friendly and open, and maybe it's the nature of business that people are working with people. So it's like a people business that people are very happy to share their experiences and be supportive. But overall, I guess my takeaway from it is, mentorship, you kind of have to search for if you're looking for it. And if we want to give it, we probably want to, as women, want to have, at least in my experience, establish relationships that's just beyond professional. And I think that's just easier to make that leap to becoming a mentor.
I was going to add that, and to Liliana's point, I don't know if mentorship was a word that was really used in the 90s and kind of into the early 2000s. I think it's more and more prevalent, but I think we've always had people in our lives who recognize our strengths and believe in us and can be honest and authentic and allow us to be honest and authentic. And I think there's a big mystery behind how to find and engage a mentor. And I don't think it's as difficult as we all make it out, or what LinkedIn or whoever makes it out to be. My story, like I had shared in the beginning, my mom, who started with the federal government in 1962 as a file clerk and retired as a chief in, the 90s, worked her way up when it was really tough for women to work, to be in the workforce, and to not have to wear a dress to work. You could wear a pantsuit instead of having to wear a dress or skirt. I mean, it was just, ridiculous type things going on. But in any event, it was as simple as her saying, I believe in you. You should just go do this for yourself. And that's all she had to say. It was that inspiration. It was this genuine, sincere belief that I could do it. And I think sometimes mentorship is just that. So.
Yeah. I was just going to add, I think when I think about mentors that I've had and what's separated the truly memorable, it's exactly that, Evelyn, like the belief in and the focus on the other person, right? So sharing your story in service of that other person's growth, or making the time to have the conversation in service of that other person's growth. And to me, that's what really, whether, you call it mentorship or anything else, but, I know for me in my life, I had a great mentor who was also my leader, my boss. And there came a point in time where I was making a career shift, and it was going to cause a lot of disruption for her. And she could have easily orchestrated the conversations that we had in such a way, because I was very loyal to her and to my work and my team. And she could have orchestrated that in a way that would have pressured me to stay, which would have made her life a lot easier. But she knew that her role as a leader and as a mentor was not about, keeping me small and down, but was about rising me up, about helping me grow, and that this was a huge growth opportunity. And so she put aside, her own needs and wants, and really made the relationship and the focus about me, which I think is the essence of mentorship.
I agree.
I think you said it so well. Yeah, that embodies that. Oh, Evelyn, yes.
Oh, no, I was just agreeing with
Yeah.
Ashley. Absolutely.
That was a beautiful intro to what everyone needs. I mean, she didn't say, I'm going to be your mentor, but she was. And she let you lead yourself to your next place, but you saw what a great leader was. And I would say to anyone that's in the audience listening now or in the future, if you have a question now, or you have a statement of what you look for in leadership, or what's been lacking in leadership in your organization, that would be good to put into the chat. To ask a leader what they look for when they are trying to develop someone. So that's another question I have for our panelists here is, when you look at your hires, the people that are working for you, or that you come across, what do you look for in those people where you say, there's a future leader there? What is that thing? Thing's a word, by the way, it's a technical term. And we can ask our Yasmin, right? It's a techie word, right? You're from the tech industry.
For sure.
But what is that thing that y'all look for when you're hiring someone? Are you trying to hire leaders? And what advice can you give to our men and women out there of what to look for? If you are looking to develop someone in your organization, what do you look for? They make you look good, right? And let's see, do we want to start with, why don't we start with Yasmin?
Sure. So I actually learned a lot in my last 2 years as a CEO of a company, where I basically, that's a glamorous word for being a small business owner. I kind of do a lot of things, and all the hiring is really on me. So I've hired a bunch of people, and some of them didn't work out. And one of the things that I came to realize is something that people told me throughout my career, and I've hired for bigger companies when I manage people in bigger companies, but when it's a small company and you are so impacted by everybody's contribution, because in a big company, like I work for Yahoo, somebody's not doing their job, you're not going to really notice it that much day to day. But in a small team, somebody's not pulling their weight, it's very obvious very quickly. So what I've learned, and I think this applies for finding the future leaders as well, is somebody first, beyond skill set, they have to have the right attitude. So the right attitude and right personality trumps all sorts of skill and experience. And I was actually pleasantly amused by, one of the books I read was Elon Musk's biography. It's this giant book I read over the holidays. And, I know he's a polarizing person, so maybe some people hate him, some people love it. But what was interesting, one of the things he said was throughout his experience, also when he was choosing to work with people, said he looks for the attitude of people. Like he sort of tries to screen for that, because he said that, you know, you can build somebody's skill, but changing somebody's attitude takes brain surgery. So, I mean, he's kind of basically, I think he said in those, not maybe exactly those words, but what he was trying to say is basically you need to take out their brain and put in a new brain in order to change their attitude. So, and I totally believe in that, and I've seen that. So when I'm looking now to answer your question, is what I look for is somebody who has the right attitude to be a good, you know, good team player, and a good leader as well. Because takes, you know, empathy and the positivity. I really think that optimistic people can do people, you know, people who, you know, are resilient, who are going to get up and go at it again, because you will always have some challenges, right? That's just a given. So that's what I really look for. And I think that, you know, the attitude is really the number one thing to look at when you are looking for new leaders.
Yeah. I
What
would
about,
so agree with that.
yes, go ahead, please.
So I'm thinking I've hired a number of people, and as you were asking the question, Michelle, I was thinking about from a coach's standpoint. So my background is in executive coaching, and I don't and have never said yes to every client, because some people are coachable and other people are not, or they're just not at a coachable stage. And really, when it comes to hiring or coaching, what I'm looking for is that coachability. And so every time I'm deciding whether to work with a client or not, I ask whether they are coachable. I mean, I don't ask them, I ask other better questions than that, but to ultimately get at whether there is humility, openness, and curiosity. Humble, open, curious are the three traits that I look for as a coach. And when I think about when I've been making hiring decisions, it's the same when it comes to the character traits that are super important, because to Yasmin's point, like we need to learn, we need to adapt. Evelyn used the word nimble. We need to be nimble. Are you open to doing things differently next year than we're doing them now? Are you open to feedback? Do you recognize that you don't have all the answers, and that there are other ways to go? And are you interested in how to do things better, how to grow, how to do more, like that genuine curiosity? I think those three traits come to mind for me.
The traits that I would look for when bringing somebody on board that would have leadership capacity is some evidence of a growth trajectory that they've had so far. So someone, even if they're still relatively early in their career, where did they start and how have they progressed and how long has it taken them, kind of from past what they've done in the past. And then in terms of, you know, the interpersonal characteristics to what everybody has shared thus far, it's like, do they have the will and the want? And are they excited about the mission of the organization? And, you know, are they bringing a good positive energy and eager to get going?
Very good. And Liliana, did you have some
Well,
input?
yeah, I mean, in this industry, we've all done it. We've all seen it, right? We tend to promote people that are really good at their jobs. And I've seen a lot of really good individual contributors be promoted that should have never have been promoted into leadership roles. So the best leaders I have ever seen and ever had the pleasure of working with are those leaders that have the ability to inspire people and to rally them, and it's because they care and because they have that, we're in the people business, and they have that ability to just connect with their teams and connect. I mean, our business is a tough business, and you know, we have so many things coming at us and we get hit a lot, right? I mean, it's a tough business and we got to, you know, we go down, we got to get back up again. But those leaders that just truly care about their teams and have that ability to be empathetic and understand and be at their level, right? No one really, if we all talk about our best leaders, is those how they made us feel, right? Not those leaders that were smarter than us or that, you know, we're constantly talking about how they could do the job better than us. So, yeah, so those are the best leaders I've ever seen and had.
And leaders need managers, and managers aren't necessarily leaders, and leaders aren't necessarily managers. And that's a whole thing that could take hours. So we won't necessarily go there. But it's interesting. You all tapped on the same thing. But in different ways. It all kind of converged, that you came across a couple of key factors, and it's interesting when you look at what you just said. They overlap and they're very, very similar. There's a pattern here. I'm sure Evelyn recognizes it. As far as on this topic of building up other women and helping others in this industry and in business in general, are there strategies that you've employed that you found especially, exciting, that you kind of discovered aha, or that you'd like to share with this group that's listening? Is there any extra something that you think, oh, you know what, I should share that with this group, a strategy that you came up with on this topic of either hiring your own staff and building them up, or just learning that pivot, because we've talked about pivoting, we've talked about the industry, and we've now talked about mentorship. Are there any strategies with any of these three topics we've kind of covered that you want to share as you're thinking, oh, I should have mentioned that before, or what have you? Do you want to start, Evelyn, or am I tapping you too soon?
I would say that in terms of mentorship, now that it is a widely adapted term and a practice, and it needs to be, there are a lot of groups. I think of one group that comes to mind. Our recruitment is primarily in the tech space. So there's a group called Women in Data, and the group promotes women who are perhaps not in technology in terms of their career, but they want to get into technology. And the group mentors women, and they're all in a variety of stages in their career. And it's a diverse audience. I believe it's an international firm now, but people are all volunteers and bring a variety of backgrounds to the table as mentors. And then they're paired up with mentees that are just looking for advice how to get into the industry, and, how to avoid pitfalls, and how to really optimize their career. So it may be a good idea, just in terms of the point that Ashley made in the beginning, join that group and participate in a way that you're basically giving back and sharing your strengths and your knowledge that would encourage, inspire others, kind of at scale, in addition to mentoring when the moment, presents itself. So
that's great input. And Liliana, speaking of giving back, you give back a lot to the community. And have you found that to be really helpful in doing what you've done? I mean, in building your business and in building your connections. I mean, have you found that just as Evelyn mentioned, possibly joining a group like Women in Data, or a group like it, where you find opportunities? Have you found all that great stuff you've been doing? I mean, anyone that read Liliana's bio, I mean, she's involved in quite a few community groups. Anything to share on that?
Yes, one of them is sometimes learn how to say no, because sometimes I do find myself a little bit overstretched, but instrumental. I mean, every single one of them. And, one of the things as I look back at my staffing career, that's something that in the industry, we don't do enough of, right? Think about it. We network a lot because we network for business development, those of us that network. And, and it was always the senior executives that would go to the staffing conferences, but really think about, your managers and below. They don't have a lot of opportunities. And when you're a part of a big, large company, you tend to network a lot with your peers. One of the things I realized is I hadn't networked enough within my industry. with other like-minded. And I wish that I had done that more. And actually, I'll give a plug to Ashley and Clara Dreisen, the program that they're doing. That's one of the things that you realize is network outside of your own company. If you have a big company, now that I have a small company, I'm forced to find other groups because that's naturally, I like to be a part of kind of a group. So I tell people, find your tribe, find your group, whatever it is, right? Especially as women, we need to network and be a part of a group of women that are in business like we are, that are business minded, whether it's our business, but find someone else that has similar kind of likes, network outside of your own organization, because it will be very instrumental in your future.
That's excellent advice. What about you, Yasmin? Did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think what I found, as I mentioned earlier, is really instrumental, as Liliana mentioned, to find people who can share their journey with you and their experience. And that's why the first year for me was all about, trying to kind of get my arms around the business. But then once I sort of did that, the second year, I've focused on getting to know more people in the staffing and recruiting industry, because again, I had very little background in it, and it's been so helpful. And just like how I met Liliana is actually, I went to the California Staffing Association owners event, which was fabulous. And I met her there, and so here I am. So it's been very interesting to see. And from that conference, I met so many I made so many helpful connections. So I really truly believe that you kind of have to make an effort to get out of your, it's so easy to get caught in day-to-day business activity, right? We can always have more hours in the day to do more work, but really putting, reaching out and making it a priority, network with people outside your company in your industry is super helpful.
And that reminds me too, before you mentioned how you became aware of CSP from the OOR, from the Owners Only Retreat. We have an upcoming conference in June, and nod your head if you think that wouldn't be good for everybody out there in this audience to really look at, and anyone else that listens, that getting into the industry, jumping in and networking with fellow professionals at all levels would be phenomenal for you. Does everybody agree?
Absolutely.
We didn't practice that. But a lot of people have either never tried a coach or have had not the greatest experience with a coach, or the word coach scares them because they didn't like to play sports. So Ashley, you're in an interesting, you're in a hot seat, on that. What is your advice to people who are like, I don't know if I want to coach. I don't know if I want to coach, but I've had a quote unquote mentor, or I don't know if I need a mentor. Did you have any thoughts on dipping the toe in the water towards self-improvement in the way of getting comfortable with being uncomfortable? Because I've heard every one of you talk about that. I think every one of you have talked about that you had to get out of your comfort zone. And any advice as a professional coach,
Yeah, nothing exciting happens in the comfort zone, really. So, it's safe and cozy. And so some nice soft coziness happens in there, but the growth and the excitement is usually outside of that comfort zone. So it's a necessity. I appreciate the conversations about the networks because and really what Liliana was saying too, and not just for business development, that's obviously a great reason to have networks. And it's also really important to have networks, connections, relationships for support, for advice, for counsel when you most need it. Because it can feel really lonely, whether you're running your own business or you're at the high levels of running an organization in the C-suite. You have to be really careful about who you turn to and who you say what to. So having that network of others who are in the industry, who understand your industry, can be super helpful. But I will say, I didn't know that there was any like negative feelings out there in the world about coaching, but no, I'm not blind to that. But I'm a firm believer that there are many different ways that we can grow ourselves and invest in ourselves in terms of our leadership development. And that leadership development should not be a one size fits all approach, because we are all different as human beings and we have different needs depending on, the stage that we're at in our career or what we're trying to achieve, how we're trying to grow. And so coaching might not be the fit for everyone, that really traditional kind of one-on-one, every other week, really personalized focus. It might be a better fit for a mentor where you can really get that advice and hear from that person's experience, because you're not going to get that from coaching. A coach is not going to give you advice, they shouldn't be. So there are differences between a coach and a mentor and a therapist and a consultant, and sometimes you need a peer group, like Liliana was referencing. And sometimes you need the more individualized approach. So I think it's, it's really understanding, how do I want to grow? Or if you're making that decision of how you're going to invest in somebody on your team, having that conversation with them of how they want to grow and what they feel like is the best resource to tap into to actualize that growth. Coaching is intensive. It's a commitment, and you are going to be disappointed from it if you aren't able to make that commitment. And so certain, leadership development experiences might have less of a commitment attached to them. And depending on what's going on in your world and how much available time you have, that might inform your decision. But certainly, the coaching space is such a unique space, particularly when you're working with an external coach, because there's this neutrality that you really don't get anywhere else. You can go home and talk to your partner or talk to your best friends about stuff that's going on with work, but they have sort of a skewed vision of what's happening, and they might also not want to hear about it. You have to be careful about your peers and what you're saying to who, and you can't always be as open and honest. But your coach, you can say whatever you want to say, and that's really unique, and it's really necessary for our growth. I was just on a coaching conversation yesterday with somebody who was fielding an approach that she was going to take with one of her direct reports, and she said, what do you think about that? And it's my job to be really real with my coachees. And I said, you can take that approach, but it's really rooted in your ego. And she was like, oh, it is really ego driven, isn't it? That's saying that to that person is all about me. And that's not the impact I'm going for. So where else do you get that kind of compassionate, there was a lot of compassion there, but that compassionate honesty in service of your own growth? So it might not be for you. It might not be for you right now, but it's certainly a great resource to be able to tap into to help leaders grow, and particularly women leaders who, to Yasmin's point, of often have more complexities involved in their role because they have more responsibilities that they're overseeing at home and such.
Well, and I think we all go through seasons. We all go through seasons of life, and sometimes you need all those things. The coach, the counselor, the best friend, the boss. Someone that you consider a boss. Would you all agree? If cycling, there's a right time and there's a not now time, and it can come and go, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be just all at once either for everyone. And I I think that you brought some really great wisdom. Also the fit of the person too in your life, whether it's a coach or it's a confidant in a mastermind group or something like that. It's all about fit, having your honesty, your transparency and honesty with that person. That's invaluable. Not everybody's going to do that in any relationship. We all have those fair weather friends or the friends that give off the, from over here stuff, not right next to you, down in the trench with you. For instance, obviously, Evelyn, Liliana, you have a bond. You've been in the trench together. You've been at the same company. That's like, you can't get much closer than that. Do you have anything to add to what Ashley said about, the coaching aspect or the fit or the journey of, sometimes you need all of that and sometimes you just need one. Any words of sorting that out, Liliana?
Now, the only thing that really comes to mind, and I don't remember who said this, but it's one of my favorite sayings, and it's when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, right? And when you think of, who said that?
I think I can't pronounce his name, but yeah, no, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I never remember who said it, but because it impacted me, right? And when I think about the times that I needed coaching or that I needed mentorship, that's really what happened. It's because, just like anything, or we've all paid for gym memberships and we've all paid for trainers. And if we weren't ready to do it, it didn't matter how much money we paid, we weren't going to do it, right? No one can make you do anything, but it's just, and I guess that's the power of your network. And I love having such a vast network because when I was ready as a student, I knew who to reach out to and I had enough of a network. And so I can't say it enough, is just grow your network and, tap into other resources and meet other people. And that's why I love organizations like CSP. And I'm also the chapter president here locally in Sacramento for NAWBO, National Association of Women Business Owners. I have not been a part of any one organization that provided me everything that I needed. Everyone provided me different things, but you have to put yourself out there and you have to search for those, because when you're ready and when you need it, they will be there for you.
I also wanted to add that fit is absolutely key. And also your ability to tell the person what you need, here's what I'm looking to achieve, and make sure that you and that person, whether it's a coach, a mentor, if you're in a mastermind group, everyone understands what it is that you're trying to achieve with them as, your helper or your coach, whatever it is. So, but fit is key. And just helping you overcome whatever may be blocking you from reaching the goals that you're trying to aspire to, and understanding what those are early on, I think can make for a successful coach engagement or mentor, or just friend that's willing to listen.
Excellent. Now we're women. We've been in the trenches. You've been in the trenches, and you've had a lot of things to overcome, challenges, just with economics, being a female, a lot of things, getting knowledge, getting the right breaks, well, making your own breaks, right, and making it happen. Did you find that being a woman actually had some special challenges? Yes, but also gave you some special advantages, or was it more things to overcome, whether it be, harassment and how you dealt with it, or being put down and how you dealt with that? Anything to add? We want to keep it upbeat, of course, not go too down, if some of you have had some tough situations there, but anything you might share on that, some insight on where, hey, being a woman is tough, but you can use it, and here's how.
I can comment on that. I think it's just like anything in life. You can, as you said, Michelle, you can look at it, half full or half empty, right? So it's your perspective, and you take the half full and make the most of it. And I'm not necessarily saying being a woman is like being only halfway capable or halfway able to do anything. But I found that what's nice about being a woman, I'll speak for myself. I'm, obviously I'm on camera, so nobody knows, but I'm a very small woman. I feel like I'm unthreatening to a lot of people. So that's in itself is a good thing. Like people just kind of, when I meet people or whatnot, I feel like people sort of are able to sort of, get a more sort of, vibe that they can talk to me, they can relate to me. I think also being a woman, always you have this more empathy, and you can just sort of, I think people have that initial, like there isn't as much of an ice to break, if you will. Whereas I find that, physically sometimes some people are very intimidating, right? And then you look at them like, oh my God. And some people don't smile, and then it makes it even worse. But I found that, so being a woman, having that empathy and warmth does really, it can be a very positive force in anything that we do, and breaks a lot of the ice. I also found that being a woman, you can relate to, there's a lot of journeys women go through, and they're more able to share it more like openly, like being a parent, right? So that brings, I think, a lot of people, whether it's men or women, actually, men go through parenthood too, and they can relate to, that's something you can connect to. And I feel like it's easier for women to talk about and share. So I really feel like there is that advantage of being a woman, that you are more in touch with, you're more empathetic. We're more empathetic. We're more able to speak about experiences. And as professional women, we can do that in a way that doesn't, detract from our professionalism, I think. And I think it can bring the human side of any business relationship and any business conversation. So that, I think, is the power of being a woman.
I wanted to share some of my experience. I think I never really thought about it in terms of I'm a woman and I'm going to start a business. I did feel like when I got an SBA loan when I started my company, and it took many months walking into banks and trying to make a case for a technology recruitment firm. Some of the bankers would just look at me. It's like, what? Technology? What's that all about? It was 1997 or whatever it was. So it's nothing like it is now. And there may have been, I doubt it, but there may have been some, thought about, well, what's this woman, even though she's been in the industry for 10 years. And it was a woman VP at a small local bank that ended up getting me my loan. But then after being in business, I think and times where if I were a part of a board and I was maybe the only woman or one of two women out of maybe 20 people sitting around a big round table brainstorming ideas, I never thought about myself as a woman going into that meeting. I thought about myself as a business person and, excited about being a part of the conversation. So it never was really, I'm a woman, these things are going to happen. And in my experience, and it might be just, the region that I'm in, but the fact that we've expanded our business outside of Sacramento, I've never run up against anything or any time that I felt that we were not hired or, there was some type of, these are women or we can't, they're not going to be able to deliver. I don't think that that's ever come up. And I think that today, I think it's even easier. I think the gap is inspiring people who may be in leadership roles now in a staffing agency, corporate staffing agency environment to pursue owning their own business, and whatever that gap is, helping them bridge that gap through some type of inspiration. So that's been my experience.
That's great to hear. I mean, that you have an experience that, part of it was probably that you didn't let it be a barrier. I mean, I don't know, maybe Ashley
That's
has more insight
exactly
on that.
what it is. I didn't think of myself going into and sitting with, in big meetings or showing up wherever. I'm a woman. What does that mean? Am I, it was, and it just, there was never any feeling of it in my experience of it being a barrier at all.
Yeah, it's almost like those conversations might have been happening of the, oh, she's a woman and is she going to make it? But that was, you didn't allow that to permeate your sense of yourself and what you knew was important to you and what you wanted to go after and get, which is hard. I mean, it's hard to silence external noise or assumptions of noise. So just kudos to you, Evelyn, for being able to do that. What I think is fantastic about being a woman are conversations like this and communities like this. And you know, the communities that I get to lead and witness all the time, where women are showing up and they're saying, I want to support other women and I want to use my experiences to help make things better. I think that like camaraderie that really exists. And certainly there are areas and pockets where there's the opposite occurring, but similar to what Michelle, you've said, and Evelyn, kind of to your point, like, you know, where we choose to focus our attention and where we choose to spend our time and who we choose to spend it with. Like, there are fantastic communities of women who are ready to embrace other women with the sole purpose of supporting and being that like system, if you will, to help like uplift and join arms with, which I think it's a wonderful thing, Michelle, a thing for that you often see with marginalized groups across the board. And of course, it would be great if that marginalization wasn't there, but while it is, it's fantastic to see so much support.
Yes, it is. And Liliana, you know, you work a lot in the diversity area, and that's a perfect entryway, you know, for your input on this, you know, where did you experience positive, negative, or take a negative and turn it positive, and anything to share on that and how you turned that corner?
You know, I think very similar to Evelyn, I am sure there's plenty of times that, you know, I was either not counted on or because of whether I was a woman or because, you know, I'm a woman of color. But I never looked at it that way. And I never thought that that's what they were doing. So it's kind of like I never labeled myself. I never put myself in that box that other people were trying to put me in. So because of that, I just I didn't let it affect me. Now looking back, I see a lot of examples of it, right? And I think the biggest thing is there's no surprise why there's so many women in this industry. Women intuitively, I mean, we're naturally more intuitive. We naturally multitask, which is not always a good thing, but we multitask much better. But the reality is we have to be aware of our own limitations that we set on ourselves. And as women, we limit ourselves. We tend to, be more intimidated by people, especially intimidated by men. I know myself in my career, I was intimidated by those senior VPs that were male because I just didn't feel like I could connect with them in that way. So advice to anyone is just be aware of it. Don't let them box you in. You know, just think outside the box. Think of what you bring to it versus because of the color of your skin or because of your gender, what they might think. And I'll just make a comment because it still happens today. I was having a conversation, not to bring politics into this, but with a friend of mine, a male friend of mine, and I wouldn't consider him. He's very progressive. He's very caring. But he made a comment about the recent debates and he's, you know, about Nikki Haley saying, gosh, she sounded so much angrier than the men. And I was thinking about it. I'm like, I watched it too. And I don't know if I picked up the angry piece. So we have to be aware of that people are perceived differently. People are going to have those perceptions, right? So the more that we're aware of it and the more that we don't take it personal, we don't realize it's not us that they're talking about. It's just their own, you know, perceptions and how they've been raised. And just don't label yourself and just don't put yourself in a box.
Oh, that's great wisdom. Don't label yourself. Don't put yourself in a box.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful, beautiful. As far as we only have about 15 more minutes left. It's hard to believe this time has really flown by. In going through the different topics we've already discussed, we have an evolving industry. We have evolving challenges. Is there something you see coming up or something you're planning for that you would welcome sharing that you think is one of the big challenges ahead in this industry? And how do you plan to address it? Or are you still kind of working that out?
I think artificial intelligence and the way that it will be used in the industry and by customers is important to think about. I don't think anybody has anywhere near the answers, but it's just important to kind of listen and kind of keep that at the top of mind in terms of how it may transform or disrupt this industry and your customers' industry and your customers' businesses.
Yeah.
That is so true.
It is true. It is true for everything, right? I think for us, something that we are looking at is really the companies that we're partnering with. How can we help them bolster their leadership pipelines? I think that's a real challenge moving forward. And Liliana talked about forecasting and how do you know who's going to be there and come year's end, and also looking at succession planning so that we aren't getting people in leadership positions that are just haphazardly thrown in there, but that there is some real thoughtfulness and some thoughtfulness around the multi-generational workforce, because as I think everybody knows, we have the greatest representation of different generations in the workforce today. So just light topics like that with the very easy answers.
Definitely light topics,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I was just reading this morning that the BLS is projecting that we're going to have the largest number of people over 65, in the next coming 30 years than we've ever had, and many of them are still going to be in the workforce. And there's more in the workforce than ever before that are over 65. And then you have the younger generations coming in and joining us too, and there's this huge, like never before, generational gap. Do you see that as a challenge that you're excited about, or that you have some strategies you're building on that as well? How about you, Liliana? Do you want to start off?
Yeah, it's not just the age, right? It's just diversity as a whole. I think the next couple of years are going to be really interesting. I don't know if anybody saw this last week. I think SAA put it in how there was a certain senator that sent a letter to all the top staffing companies about reverse discrimination, right? There's been so much talk about affirmative action and a lot of the changes that are being made. I mean, whereas before there was access to capital for women because they were a woman, a lot of those things are going away. The SBA was sued against their 8A program. So there's a lot of heat right now around that and what people are now calling reverse discrimination, because they're saying you shouldn't, just because you qualify as a certain race or gender, qualify for something more than somebody else should. And that includes age, right? So we have 5 generations in the workforce right now, the first time ever that has happened. And it's not so much about the individuals that are retiring, it's those folks that are 65 and 70 that are still working, that are maybe going to train the younger folks. Those 2 generations have the biggest gap between how they communicate and how they learn. So part of it is who's going to train your next generation of leaders, right? Because the folks that are currently in leadership roles are not really knowing how to connect with the younger generation coming in. So it's going to be in the workforce as a whole, but you know what? That's what keeps us employed, and that's what keeps us learning, is just talent acquisition in the workforce as a whole is experiencing a lot right now.
Yeah, I'd like to
Yasmin.
add to that actually with what Liliana said. I think it's very interesting to me coming in and trying to hire and build up a team, how different generations view work very differently, and their responsibilities towards work and their attitudes. So and I'm talking to some of my friends in other industries, I think there were 2, age is part of it, and then the pandemic, there's a generation now, this is the youngest generation that's working. Actually, their first few years, or, you know, most of their years were during the pandemic, where they work from home, and it was perfectly acceptable to, you know, basically multitask with your personal business while you're doing work, or not show up because, you know, you had show up to some Zoom meeting because you've had some, you know, personal conflict. And not only once, but like every week type of thing. And so I think that's going to be interesting to see how, as the younger generations get into their career, get more their swing, and transition out of COVID, how they're going to, you know, adjust their others. If they're not going to adjust, how are we going to have to adjust to work with them? Because it is a little bit sometimes, you know, puzzling to me. If they're going to be able to, I mean, maybe the workforce, you know, the attitudes for work going to change in the United States in general. But just to also provide a global perspective, I see, for example, like in the Asian cultures, there's still a very, very strong work ethic. Like people still work very long hours, and they, you know, they put in, you know, it doesn't matter if they're working remotely. So that's the other dynamic, that those of us who, you know, deal with a more international, you know, workforce or whatever, you see that there's a difference between the US work culture and the, you know, outside. So I don't have any answers. I'm just observing these things, and I think that's going to be interesting for us to deal with it as leaders going forward.
And I don't know if anyone else has anything to add on this particular topic as we wrap things up. If you all, you know, have a last minute thought on these challenges that we have in front of us, and how you plan to strategize to attack them, and what guidance you might give to everyone out there listening now and in the future as they're listening. That it would be great to kind of give some final thoughts to everyone about what you would recommend if someone is struggling right now with any of the topics we've talked about, but they didn't want to put a message in here and ask a question. If they have a struggle, what's a key takeaway that at least we can give them that if they didn't want to put a question in here? Kind of last thoughts, all these topics we've come across. We've talked about the industry, we've talked about the changes, we talked about the power of being a woman, the power of networking, and so many things. We covered so many topics. What key things can we share? Can we kind of go down the line, like starting with you, Evelyn? What key takeaways would you have?
Well, I think it's, you know, to Liliana's point, find your tribe, find people that you trust, that you can share ideas and also get ideas from, and also remain flexible, adaptable, and aware of what's going on with your customers and your team. And consider having a mentor or coach that can help you get to the next level with whatever that may be, and make sure it's the person that you're a good fit with, and that they understand where the roadblocks may be.
Yeah, I
Thank
feel
you.
like Ellen just like covered everything, but I would echo that. Like the tribe piece seems really resonant, and to reach out. Like those are the words that come to my mind, to have somebody in your network who you can reach out to, share, explore, ask questions of. And I can't remember who brought it up, but also that bigger picture, that bigger purpose. You know, it can be easy to get mired by the small details and the small challenges, because they feel really big. But to tether yourself to your bigger why, your bigger purpose, especially in those moments.
Yasmin, how about you?
I think all of our panel members who you know, had the right wisdom to share on this, that I'll add. I think my takeaway is that we're not alone. So no matter what you're going through, you're not alone. You just need to find that person who will share their experience with you. And it's probably already there. You just need to put yourself out there, you know, go out of your way. If you feel alone, just go reach out to people. And I think that's, I'll just tie it back to, I think that's what's good about being a woman. I think women naturally are more into, sharing and empathizing for other people, with other people. So I do feel like if you ever feel alone, or like you don't know what to do next, or like this problem seems insurmountable, I think you just need to reach out and find somebody else who've been through something similar.
Thank you very much. And Liliana, our anchor.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Ditto to everyone, but I guess in addition to that, it's continue to educate yourself, right? Things are moving and changing so fast. I mean, the positive thing that came out of COVID is you literally can find a Zoom webinar or a training about pretty much everything, and you don't have to leave wherever you are. I mean, there's so much stuff available online, right? I'm not a big YouTuber, but recently someone was sharing something with me and I was like, oh my God, you literally can find anything. So there's a lot available to you. Be that constant learner and learn, because our industry moves too fast, and don't wait until it becomes a big thing, because by that point you're too late.
Wiser words were never spoken. We've all enjoyed having you join us today for Vital Talks, all in our audience, and our panelists, Evelyn Milani and Ashley Anderson and Yasmin Kleiman and Liliana Burnell. You've been amazing. Nothing short of amazing. Sharing everything you've done that has worked for you, and what to do if it doesn't. And I think you shared special wisdom, and I love what Ashley said is, nothing exciting actually happens in the comfort zone. And I think that, and that's a perfect analogy. Have did anything comfortable happen to you in your success journey? I mean, were you just sitting there in the comfort zone when your success happened? I don't think so, right? Say here and now if it did, because you guys have excelled at discomfort, and look at you now. You're leaders in our industry. And we're so grateful to have you here and having had joined us. I hope you'll join us again. Would you join us again?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, that was
Thank you for
great.
the opportunity.
Sure.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, I don't have any other questions that have come through in the question box, but I did want to cycle through with some of our information for members, that whether you're a member or you're thinking about being a member or you're coming back to membership, which, again, it's a season, right? You can come, you can go, but CSP's been here a while, and it's going to be here a while. And if you're just getting back to membership, and you might check the little box down below there that says already a member, because there's some things to update in your membership file, so that when you register for all of our Vital Talks events like this, it's free. It's part of membership. It's just one of the many huge values that CSP has. And I don't know if anyone has any questions about membership, but if you do, you can reach out to cspnet.org or to Sylvia, our membership chair. I'm sure she'd love to hear from you. You can also reach out to me. I mean, we are just here for you. Talk about mentoring others, and that's what CSP is all about. Evelyn was sharing her experience, and Liliana was sharing her experience with CSP, and Yasmin, you were sharing your great experience with CSP, just being new to the group. And then Ashley, you just embraced us so much. You already reached out to me on LinkedIn and say, hey, let's link. And so CSP does that all the time, 24/7, all day, every day. And there's an upcoming event. If you want to really make some impact, the CSP Legislative Day, February 6th and 7th, it's up in Sacramento. That's in your backyard, right there, Liliana.
Me too.
And that's an incredible event. It's a way to get in front of legislators and to learn more about being active and how important it is. And you can say, well, I don't want to be political, but it's, CSP does a lot to help keep us all in business. And check it out. That's all I can say is check it out. And if you have any questions, just reach out to CSP. And then upcoming events, besides Legislative Day, mark your calendars for June 5th, 6th, and 7th. That's conference, beautiful Rancho Mirage. It's going to be wonderful. And you should just sign up. We're still assigning the speakers. That will come, but regardless of who's speaking, you want to be there to network. And again, we want to thank you for joining us for CSP's Vital Talks today. And again, our panelists. And where would we be without all of our wonderful sponsors that we have too? And you can see if you're joined in, you can see online. I'm going to name off their names for those who are audio: Insurica, Tricom, Avanti, Nixer, Worldwide, Wisely, ADP, and Philadelphia. These are all sponsors who are GEM sponsors, and they help put on events like this and supporting us. And we're really grateful for them. Our industry partners are definitely our partners. They were here with us the whole COVID. And we were putting on all kinds of extra events virtually for our members to keep them going. Our industry partners never left us. So thank you so much for joining us today. And again, thank you, Evelyn and Ashley and Yasmin and Liliana. You're just amazing, and your
Thank you.
wisdom.
Thank
Great
you.
to be
Thank you,
here.
Michelle,
Thank you
for
so
moderating.
much.
Sure.
Bye, everybody.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Say goodbye. Bye-bye.